Hello, my name is Chris Bowie, and my Capstone 2 project was on forecasting EMS call rates in San Francisco. So the problem I was hoping to address was how should EMS vehicles be allocated throughout San Francisco on a daily basis, because having vehicles optimized in terms of their placement in the neighborhoods that they're traveling around, we could reduce the ambulance response rates and ultimately save lives. And so the use case of what I'm doing is by predicting the EMS call rates by neighborhood in San Francisco, we could use that information to then dictate the optimized distribution of the EMS vehicles throughout San Francisco throughout the period of the day. And so my data was 5.32 million EMS calls. After removing duplicates, I had about 2.6 million EMS calls over a 20-year time period. And I aggregated these to 3-hour time periods throughout the day, including the total calls essentially by neighborhood or as a whole in the data. And to test the models I ended up running, I ran the prediction on the week in mid-August in 2018. So based on the 20 years of data, this is the yearly trend by neighborhood, and the neighborhoods are in order of highest call rate to lowest in the legend. In the following graphs that you'll see, you can see all the neighborhoods tend to have a similar proportional increase in the call rates over the last 20 years. The monthly seasonality is also similar in hitting a peak around the holiday season and then a dip around February. Weekly seasonality is also pretty similar, tending to peak on Friday and Saturday and hitting a minimum on Sunday. And the daily seasonality, which is the most useful for the use case, where we can see that it peaks in the early mid-afternoon and hits its minimum in the late morning or late night / early morning. And the two models that I compared against each other for this prediction was an ARIMA model and a profit model. So I used a seasonal ARIMA model to capture the daily seasonality in the data, and it had a really high runtime. So I decided to limit it to using 3 weeks of data to predict the 4th week. And I ran a grid search to optimize the parameters and ended up with the following. You can see the results there, where the first half of the graph is, so in this case, the 3rd week the model was trained on, so the last week that it was trained on. And the second half of the graph is the predicted week that it was tested on. And here's the results from the Facebook profit model that I ran, which that ran much faster. So I was able to train that on a full 2-year scope of data from 2016 up until the same predicted date of that week in August. You can see it similarly did a pretty good job of predicting the daily seasonality in that week. The RSME values I got, Profit performed slightly better than the ARIMA model, and I compared those as a control. I just used the previous week's values to predict the target week, and the two models did a significantly better job of predicting the call rates than that benchmark did. And so I decided to move forward with the Facebook profit model. And you can see here the top 3 neighborhoods I projected out the daily 3-hour periods by for those 2 weeks, the one that it was trained on and then the one target. And you can see they both capture, all 3 of them capture the daily seasonality pretty well. See here the weekly, where it was aggregated by day, which there's a lot more variation we're seeing here, but that yellow line is generally predicting the weekly trend that's captured in that 2-year period. And for next steps, I would try to model it using an LSTM, because that could capture more features of the data and presumably get a better model. I'd also add holidays and other features so that my model was able to take into account specific days where there are going to be expected peaks, which we can see in the data on like New Year's Eve and Christmas and so on. I'd also optimize the parameters in Profit, because these results were based on the default parameters. And I would also test the models on more weeks than just the one that I did. And for more further use, I'd use it for anomaly detection. In the 2-week period, looking at the predictions, looking at some of the max residuals that I got, I was able to identify specific events like a heat wave in San Francisco where events peaked and a power outage blackout on April 21st. So further using the residuals analysis, I could identify more features that would help to predict what kind of events are going to lead to a spike in EMS calls, and so that the emergency services can be best prepared for those events. Thank you.